In a forgotten Tennessee town, a couple tears up their floor and finds a chilling secret, a hidden nursery, locked away for decades, with cribs carved with names of missing children. Whispers in mirrors, cryptic tapes, and a shadowy cult called the Veil pull Detective Sarah Conway into a nightmare that might include her own past. This story's fiction, crafted for education and entertainment, but it'll haunt you. Want to unravel the mystery? Like, comment, share, and subscribe to join the hunt. Don't miss the shocking truth at the end. The storm had torn through Black Hollow, Tennessee, like a freight train, leaving behind a humid haze that clung to everything. It was late July, 2025, and the air smelled of wet earth and pine. The old farmhouse on the edge of town, a foreclosure Jack and Ellie Harper had snagged for a steal, stood silent under a bruised sky. Its sagging porch and chipped paint screamed neglect, but the 5 acres of overgrown land sealed the deal. They'd been at it for weeks, ripping out warped floorboards, scrubbing decades of grime, chasing their dream of flipping the place for a profit. Tonight, though, something felt off. The cicadas were too quiet. Jack knelt in the living room, sweat beading on his forehead despite the evening chill. His crowbar bit into a stubborn pine plank, the wood groaning as it gave way. Ellie stood in the doorway, wiping primer from her hands onto her paint-splattered jeans. Her dark curls were tied back, but a few strands stuck to her neck. The room smelled faintly of mildew, the kind that crept up after a good rain. They'd been at it since noon, tearing up the floor to replace it with something modern. The old house, built in 1910 and patched up in the 1980s, fought them every step of the way. "Jack, you sure we can't just sand these down?" Ellie asked, her voice tight. She glanced at the pile of splintered boards in the corner. "This is taking forever." Jack grunted, wedging the crowbar deeper. "These boards are shot. Half of them are rotted through. We'll be done by midnight if we keep at it." He gave the plank a final yank, and it popped free with a crack. Something metal clinked beneath, sharp and out of place. Jack froze, crowbar hovering. What the hell was that? Ellie stepped closer, squinting into the gap. "Joist?" she guessed, but her tone wasn't convinced. Jack tapped the crowbar against the subfloor. Clink, clink. Not wood, not rust. Something solid, flat, maybe steel. He adjusted his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dust. A square of metal sat flush with the subfloor, about 2 feet wide, with a recessed handle crusted in grime. A hinge glinted faintly along one edge. "Is that a trapdoor?" Ellie whispered, crouching beside him. Her voice carried a tremor, like she already knew the answer but didn't want it to be true. Jack's jaw tightened. Not on the blueprints. They'd pored over those plans for weeks, every beam, every pipe, every load, bearing wall. The listing had mentioned a fire-damaged outbuilding, long gone, but nothing about a hatch under the living room. He pried at the edge of the plank, clearing away cobwebs. The handle was cold, rusted, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. "Grab the PB blaster," he said, keeping his eyes on the hatch. Ellie returned with the spray can and a flathead screwdriver, her movements quick, nervous. They'd flipped 3 houses before this, found old wells, even a buried storm shelter once, but nothing like this. Nothing sealed beneath a living space. Jack sprayed the bolts, the sharp chemical smell mixing with the mildew. He waited a beat, then wedged the screwdriver under the handle and pulled. The hatch creaked, resisting. "Watch your fingers," Ellie murmured, gripping the flashlight tighter. He yanked again, harder. The seal broke with a dry gasp, dust puffing up like a sigh from the earth. The hatch groaned open, revealing a square wooden tunnel, just wide enough for a grown man to crawl through. It dropped about 4 feet, then turned sharply left, disappearing into shadow. The air that wafted up was cold, stale, and carried a faint sweetness, like baby powder gone sour. Ellie's skin prickled. "That's not a storage space," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jack leaned closer, shining the flashlight down the shaft. "Smell that?" he asked, his tone low, cautious. "It's not just mildew." Ellie nodded, her throat tight. "Baby powder. Like the kind my mom used when I was a kid." She hesitated, then added, "But old, wrong." Jack's eyes met hers, a silent agreement passing between them. This wasn't right. He grabbed the portable lantern from their toolbox and swung his legs into the crawl. "I'm going first," he said, his voice steady but edged with something sharp. "Be careful," Ellie said, holding the light steady as his boots echoed softly against the plywood walls. The tunnel was narrow, reinforced with concrete, built to last. Whoever made this hadn't meant for it to be found. Jack's flashlight beam bounced ahead, catching glimpses of rough wood and something else, marks, like scratches, etched into the sides. "Jack," Ellie called, her voice muffled by the tight space. "What do you see?" "Hold on," he replied, his words echoing faintly. "It opens up down here." Ellie followed, her heart thudding against her ribs. The air grew colder as she descended, the temperature dropping 10 degrees in seconds. Her sneakers hit the floor, and she straightened, the lantern casting long shadows across a low, wide room, maybe 12 feet by 10. The walls were lined with pale blue insulation panels, stained yellow with age. The floor was cracked linoleum, curling at the edges like burnt paper. But it was the center of the room that stopped her cold. A white wooden crib sat there, its paint chipped, bars chewed and worn. Beside it, a rocking horse tilted sideways, its red paint faded to a sickly pink. A plush giraffe slumped against a stack of faded plastic rings, the kind kids use for stacking games. In the corner, a high chair, its tray warped, and a pink baby walker, wheels frozen with rust. The wallpaper, barely clinging to the walls, was covered in cartoon ducks and rabbits wearing pastel hats. A mobile dangled above the crib, its shapes warped, spinning slowly in a draft they couldn't feel. "Oh my God," Ellie whispered, her breath catching. The room was a nursery, frozen in the 1980s, untouched by time. No modern monitors, no safety gates, just relics of a decade long gone. The sweetness in the air was stronger now, cloying, mixed with something else, something like old wood in decay. Jack's flashlight swept the room, landing on a nameplate nailed to the crib. The letters were plastic, cheap, the kind you'd find at a dollar store in 1986. They spelled out EMMA. He stepped closer, his boots scuffing the linoleum. "There's another one," he said, his voice tight. He pointed to a second crib, tucked behind a stack of cardboard boxes. The nameplate read, CALEB, and in the far corner, almost hidden, a third crib, smaller, shabbier, with a single word, NORA. Ellie's hands trembled as she held the lantern. "Jack, this isn't right. Why would someone hide a nursery under a house?" Jack didn't answer. His beam caught something else, a cassette recorder, plugged into a dusty outlet, its cord frayed but intact. A single tape sat inside, labeled in faded ink, Session 12, Obedience. He reached for it, but Ellie grabbed his arm. "Don't," she said, her voice sharp. "This feels wrong, like it's not abandoned, like it's hidden." Jack nodded slowly, but his fingers hovered over the play button. "We need to know," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. He pressed it. The recorder hissed, static crackling like distant thunder. Then a child's voice, soft and high, cut through the silence. "Blue is listening. Be good." The words were mechanical, rehearsed, like a prayer recited by rote. The tape clicked off, leaving the room heavier, the air thicker. Ellie's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear her own thoughts. "What the hell was that?" she whispered, stepping back. Her foot brushed something soft. She looked down and froze. A rag doll, its eyes stitched shut with thick black thread, lay at her feet. Its faded blue dress was stained with something dark, almost like rust. Jack's flashlight flicked to the ceiling, then back to the doll. "We're calling this in," he said, his voice steady but his hands shaking as he pulled out his phone. "Now." Ellie nodded, but her eyes were locked on the doll. "Jack," she said, her voice barely audible. "Did you hear that?" He paused, finger hovering over the dial button. "Hear what?" She swallowed hard. "Singing. Like a kid. Coming from the tunnel." Jack's head snapped toward the crawl space. The lantern's light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the nursery walls. For a moment, there was nothing, just the hum of their own breathing. Then it came, faint but unmistakable. A child's voice, off-key, drifting from the dark. "Baby blue in the sky, don't look down or you'll cry." Ellie's blood ran cold. "That's not possible," she said, her voice breaking. "We're alone down here." Jack grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the tunnel. "We're getting out. Now." 9. They climbed back up, the plywood creaking under their weight. The living room was empty when they emerged, the front door still ajar from earlier. Ellie's eyes darted to the open hatch. "Jack, we didn't lock it," she said, her voice tight. "We left it open." Jack's jaw clenched. He crossed to the door, peered outside. Nothing but the breeze, the rustle of wet leaves, and the endless stretch of Tennessee farmland. "Nobody's here," he said, but his tone wasn't convinced. He dialed 911, his voice steady as he spoke to the dispatcher. "We found something under our house. A trapdoor, a room. You need to send someone now." The first squad car rolled up 11 minutes later, tires crunching on the gravel drive. Deputy Clara Vance, a local born and raised in Black Hollow, stepped out, her boots sinking into the mud. She was in her early 50s, gray streaking her hair, but her eyes were sharp, like she'd seen too much to be surprised. "You Jack Harper?" she asked, adjusting her belt. Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah. It's under the floor. We were renovating, and we found something." "Show me," Clara said, pulling out a notepad. Her tone was calm, but her hand rested near her holster. Ellie led her to the open hatch, the lantern still casting a dim glow below. "It's not on the blueprints," she said, her voice shaky. "There's a nursery down there. Cribs, toys, a tape recorder. Names on the cribs: Emma, Caleb, Nora." Clara's eyes narrowed. "Those names mean anything to you?" Ellie shook her head. "Number. But they're not random. It feels deliberate." Clara crouched by the hatch, shining her flashlight down the tunnel. The beam caught the edge of the crib, the warped mobile spinning slowly. She stiffened, her hand tightening on the light. "I know those names," she murmured, almost to herself. She stood, her face pale. "Stay here, don't touch anything else." Jack frowned. "You've seen this before?" Clara didn't answer right away. She pulled her radio from her belt and spoke into it, her voice low. "Dispatch, this is Vance. I need backup at the old Miller place on Route 6. Possible crime scene. Send forensics and Detective Conway." She turned back to Jack and Ellie, her expression grim. 1987. The Black Hollow Daycare Fire. 3 kids went missing. Emma Tate, Caleb Dunn, Nora Hayes. Everyone thought they burned. 4. Ellie's stomach twisted. "You're saying those cribs, they're theirs?" Clara's eyes flicked to the hatch. "I'm saying this house is next to where that daycare used to be, and those names aren't a coincidence." Jack stepped closer, his voice low. "What happened in 87? Clara exhaled through her nose, her gaze distant. "The fire started in the kitchen. Electrical," they said. "The owner, Eleanor Voss, swore she put the kids down for a nap in the back room. By the time the fire trucks got there, the whole place was gone. No bodies, no bones, just ash. Case went cold. Town never forgot, though." Ellie's hands clenched into fists. "In this room? Under our house?" Clara didn't answer. She descended the tunnel, her flashlight cutting through the dark. Jack and Ellie waited above, the silence pressing against them like a weight. Minutes stretched, each one heavier than the last. Finally, Clara emerged, her face ashen. "It's a nursery, all right," she said, her voice tight. "But it's more than that. There's a cassette down there, labeled Obedience. And that doll, it's got stains that don't look like dirt." Jack's throat went dry. "What kind of stains?" Clara's eyes met his, unflinching. "Blood." Ellie covered her mouth, her knees weak. "We didn't touch anything," she said quickly. "Just the hatch, the recorder, that's it." Clara nodded, but her expression didn't soften. "Good. Forensics will take it from here. You two stay put." She radioed again, Her voice clipped. "Give me a tin over the hatch. Nobody goes in or out." By nightfall, the Harper property was a crime scene. Yellow tape cordoned off the front yard, fluttering in the wind. A forensics van from Knoxville arrived, followed by a coroner's unit. Neighbors gathered across the street, whispering under the glow of streetlights. Floodlights lit up the living room, casting harsh shadows over the open hatch. Jack and Ellie stood on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching as techs in white suits carried out evidence bags. The doll, the cassette, a stack of faded children's books all sealed and labeled. Detective Sarah Conway arrived just after 7, her boots muddy from a case in the next county. She was tall, late 30s, with short-cropped hair and eyes that didn't miss a thing. She ducked under the tape, nodding at Clara. "What have we got?" she asked, her voice low but commanding. Clara handed her a clipboard. "Hidden room under the floor. 3 cribs, each with a name: Emma, Caleb, Nora. Matches the kids from the '87 fire. Found a tape recorder, some toys, and a doll with possible bloodstains." Sarah's eyes flicked to the hatch. "Blueprints." "Nothing," Clara said. "This wasn't built in 1910. The construction's newer, late 70s, maybe early 80s. Reinforced plywood, concrete supports. Someone meant to keep it hidden." Sarah crouched by the hatch, peering into the dark. "And the Harpers?" "Found it by accident," Clara said. "They're shaken, but they're cooperating." Sarah stood, her gaze sharp. "I want everything bagged and logged. Cribs, toys, bedding, the tape. Especially the tape." She turned to Jack and Ellie, her expression unreadable. "You two said you heard singing?" Ellie nodded, her voice barely steady. "Yeah. A kid's voice. Coming from the tunnel." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Anything else?" Jack hesitated, then pointed to the hatch. "The door. We left it open when we climbed out. Now it's locked. From the inside." Sarah's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer to the hatch, her flashlight sweeping the tunnel. The beam caught something new, a faint scratch on the plywood, fresh, like it had been made in the last hour. It was a single word, carved in jagged letters: blue. She stood, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Nobody locks a door from the inside, unless they're still down there." The Black Hollow police station smelled of burnt coffee and old paper, a squat brick building tucked behind the town's only gas station. It was just past 9 in the evening, July 2025, and the air outside hung heavy with the threat of another storm. Inside, Detective Sarah Conway leaned against a chipped desk, her boots leaving faint mud streaks on the linoleum. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow over the evidence bags spread out before her. The Harper house discovery had turned the quiet Tennessee town upside down, and Sarah's gut told her this was only the beginning. She stared at the cassette tape from the hidden nursery, its faded label reading Session 12, Obedience in block letters. Beside it, a rag doll with stitched-shut eyes sat in a sealed plastic bag, the dark stains on its dress glaring under the light. Sarah's fingers twitched, itching to play the tape, but she waited. Forensics was still dusting the cribs and toys pulled from the Harper's crawl space. The trapdoor, locked from the inside, hadn't been touched since Deputy Clara Vance's team set up a tent over it. That word blue was scratched into the plywood haunted Sarah. It wasn't just a name, it was a warning. Clara stepped into the room, her notepad already open. "Forensics found something else under the floor," she said, her voice low, like she didn't want the walls to hear. "A notebook, leather-bound, tucked behind one of the cribs. Looks like a logbook, maybe from the 1980s. Handwritten, real, meticulous." Sarah's eyes snapped up. "What's in it?" Clara hesitated, her thumb brushing the edge of the notepad. Notes about kids: Emma, Caleb, Nora. Daily entries: behavior, responses, punishments. Whoever wrote it was tracking them like lab rats. Mentioned someone named Dr. Leonard Crane and something called the Promise Project. Sarah's jaw tightened. The name Crane rang a bell, faint but sharp, like a memory she couldn't quite place. "Crane," she repeated, her voice low. "Why do I know that name?" Clara shrugged. but her eyes were uneasy. He was a psychologist, worked out of Knoxville back in the day. Got his license yanked in '85 for unethical experiments. Word was, he dropped off the map after that. Sarah's mind raced. The Black Hollow Daycare Fire, 1987, had been ruled an accident electrical failure. No bodies found. 3 kids presumed dead. Imitate, Caleb Dunn, Nora Hayes. Now their names were carved on cribs in a hidden room, tied to a disgraced doctor and some shadowy project. She grabbed the evidence bag with the notebook, flipping it open. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded but legible. One entry, dated August 3rd, 1987, caught her eye. Subject B refuses visual cues. Isolate for 48 hours. Dr. Crane to review. Below it, in smaller script, promise project requires absolute compliance. Subject B, Sarah muttered, her finger tracing the words. Who's that? Clara pointed to a Polaroid tucked into the back of the notebook, now sealed in a separate evidence bag. It showed a girl, maybe 4 years old, standing in front of a large mirror in the nursery. Her face was blank, her eyes fixed on something off camera. The mirror behind her was empty, no reflection, just a gray void. Sarah's skin prickled. This doesn't make sense, she said, holding the photo to the light. Why's there no reflection? Clara's voice dropped. That's not all. Look at the tape. Huh. Sarah slid the cassette into the department's old player, the machine whirring to life with a reluctant groan. The screen flickered, static, giving way to grainy footage of the nursery. 3 children sat in a row on the linoleum floor, each holding a laminated card with a symbol, a sun, a tree, a house. A woman's voice, sharp and unfamiliar, not Eleanor Voss, the daycare owner, came through the speaker. Choose the safe one, she said, her tone cold, clinical. Wrong choice means the box. Sign. Emma, the smallest, pointed to the sun. Caleb hesitated, then picked the tree. Nora, her hands trembling, touched the house. A buzzer sounded, harsh and jarring. Nora flinched, curling into herself. The woman's voice snapped. Wrong, Nora, you know what happens. Sarah's stomach twisted. The box? She asked, glancing at Clara. Clara's face was grim. There's a metal crate in the corner of the room, about 3 feet by 3. Looks like a dog kennel. It's in the footage. Sarah fast-forwarded the tape. The camera panned to the crate, its door open, the inside dark and cramped. Nora climbed in, her movements robotic, like she'd done it before. The door slammed shut, and the screen cut to black. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't a daycare, she said, her voice low, dangerous. This was a cage. Clara nodded. There's more. The notebook mentions a 4th kid. No name, just subject B. Called her baby Blue. Throwing. Sarah's eyes flicked back to the Polaroid. The girl in the photo? Maybe, Clara said. But she's not listed in the fire report. Emma, Caleb, Nora, they were the only ones reported missing. If there was a 4th, nobody looked for her. Sarah's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. She glanced at the screen, a local number, unfamiliar. She answered, her voice clipped. Conway. Detective, a man's voice said, soft but urgent. This is Pastor Daniel Reed, from First Hollow Baptist. I heard about the Harper place. You need to know something about that house. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. Go on. Not here, Reed said. Meet me at the church. Midnight. Bring the tape. Sarah frowned. Why midnight? And why the tape? Reed's voice dropped to a whisper. Because I've heard it before, and I know where it came from. The line went dead. The church was a weathered clapboard building on the edge of Black Hollow, its steeple leaning slightly under the weight of years. The parking lot was empty when Sarah pulled up at 11:55, her cruiser's headlights cutting through the fog. The air smelled of damp pine and something sharper, like ozone before a storm. She tucked the cassette into her jacket pocket, her service weapon holstered under her arm. Pastor Daniel Reed was waiting on the steps, his gray hair catching the moonlight. He was in his 60s, wiry, with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the town's secrets. You're late, Reed said, his voice low but not unkind. He gestured to the church door, already unlocked. Inside, Sarah followed, her boots echoing on the hardwood floor. The sanctuary was dim, lit only by a few flickering candles on the altar. The air felt heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. Reed led her to a small office in the back, its shelves crammed with old hymnals and town records. He shut the door behind them, his hands trembling slightly. "Talk," Sarah said, crossing her arms. "What do you know about the Harper house?" Reed sat behind his desk, his fingers steepled. 1987. The daycare fire. I was there, helping pull people out. Eleanor Voss ran that place, sweet as pie to everyone's face. But I always thought something was off. She'd get visitors at odd hoursmen in suits, not from around here. And there was this one guy, Dr. Leonard Crane. He'd come by, always carrying a briefcase, never smiled. Sarah's pulse quickened. Crane, the psychologist? Reed nodded. He wasn't just a shrink. He was running something, Sarah. Something called the Promise Project. I overheard him once, talking to Eleanor about conditioning the kids. Said it was for their own good, to make them pure. And Sarah pulled the notebook from her jacket, flipping to the page about the Promise Project. This mentions it. Says Crane was tracking the kids, running tests. You ever see anything else? Reed's eyes darted to the cassette in her hand. That tape. I heard one like it, years ago. Eleanor gave it to me, said it was a sample for some study. I thought it was just kids singing, but there was this voice. A woman, not Eleanor. She kept saying obey the light. I gave it back, told her I didn't want any part of it. Sarah's throat tightened. Where'd the tape come from? Reed leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. Coldwater, Indiana. There's a place there, an old church called Sanctum Hall. Eleanor said they sent her the tapes, part of some network. I didn't ask questions. I should have. Sarah's mind raced. Coldwater was 4 hours north, a dying industrial town with more abandoned factories than people. She'd heard whispers about Sanctum Hall, rumors of strange meetings, locked doors, kids seen coming and going at night. You're saying this goes beyond Black Hollow? She asked. Reed's eyes were grim. I'm saying it never stopped. The fire was no accident, Sarah. It was a cover, and whatever they were doing to those kids, it's still out there. Sarah slid the cassette into the office's ancient player, her hands steady despite the churn in her gut. The screen flickered to life, showing the nursery again. This time, the camera was fixed in a corner, capturing the 3 kids, Emma, Caleb, Nora, sitting at a small table. A 4th child, a girl, stood in the shadows, her face obscured. The woman's voice came again, cold and precise. Which one makes you safe? She asked. Emma pointed to the sun. Caleb chose the tree. Nora hesitated, her hand shaking. The buzzer sounded, and the crate's door creaked open. Sarah's stomach lurched as Nora climbed in, her small body disappearing into the dark. But it was the 4th child who made Sarah freeze. She stepped into the light, her eyes blank, her voice barely audible. Blue is watching, she whispered, looking straight at the camera. Sarah hit pause, her heart pounding. That's her, she said. Subject B, Baby Blue. Reed's face paled. She wasn't in the fire report. Nobody looked for her. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another unknown number. She answered, her voice sharp. Conway. A woman's voice, soft and trembling, came through. Detective, my name's Lila Harper. I think you found something in my cousin's house. I was there. In 1987. I was one of them. Sarah's breath caught. Lila, where are you? Springfield, the woman said, her voice breaking. I don't remember much, but I know the names. Emma, Caleb, Nora, and Blue. They called me Baby Blue. Sarah's eyes flicked to the frozen image on the screen, the girl in the shadows, her face half hidden. Stay where you are, she said. I'm coming to you. The drive to Springfield took an hour, the highway cutting through rolling hills and dark forests. Sarah's cruiser smelled of leather and stale coffee, the dashboard clock ticking past 11. Lila Harper lived in a modest apartment complex, the kind with peeling paint and flickering streetlights. Sarah parked half a block away, her hand resting on her holster as she approached. The air was thick, the storm clouds gathering again, and the faint hum of cicadas felt like a warning. Lila answered the door on the second knock, her face pale, her brown hair pulled into a loose bun. She was 28, slim, with a faint scar on her temple and a tattoo on her inner wrist, a single letter B, faded but unmistakable. Her gray sweater hung loose, the sleeves pulled over her knuckles. "You're Conway?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, stepping inside. The apartment was small, cluttered with books and half-painted canvases. A single lamp cast long shadows across the room. "You said you were there," Sarah said, keeping her tone gentle but firm. "Tell me what you remember." Lila sat on the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. "I was 4, she said, her eyes distant. "The daycare. It wasn't normal. They'd lock us in this room, under the floor. There were cribs, toys, but it felt wrong. Like we were being watched. There was this woman, Eleanor. She'd make us pick cards, say things. If we got it wrong, we'd go in the box." Sarah's jaw clenched. "The crate?" Lila nodded, her hands trembling. "They called it the dog box. I hated it. No light, no sound, just you in the dark." She paused, her voice breaking. "There was a boy, too. Older. Ezra. He didn't talk much, but he'd watch us from the corner. They kept him in a different room, one with a big mirror. They said he was special." Sarah pulled out the Polaroid, sliding it across the coffee table. "Is this the room?" Lila's breath hitched as she looked at the photo. "That's it," she whispered. "The mirror. I remember it. They'd make us look into it, say things like Blue is listening. I thought it was a game, but Ezra, he was scared of it. Said it wasn't just a mirror." Sarah leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Lila's eyes flicked to the window, like she expected someone to be watching. "He said he saw things in it. Faces, not ours. Like kids who weren't there anymore." She swallowed hard. "The night of the fire, they took me out through a tunnel. I heard Ezra scream, but I never saw him again. I thought he burned." Sarah's phone buzzed again, but she ignored it. "Lila, you're safe now, but I need to know everything. Who was the woman on the tape?" Lila shook her head. "I don't know her name. She wasn't there all the time, but she wasn't like Eleanor. Eleanor was soft, kind. This woman, she was cold, like she didn't see us as kids." 7-4. Sarah pulled out the cassette player from her bag, setting it on the table. "I'm going to play this. Tell me if you recognize anything." Lila's eyes widened, but she nodded. Sarah pressed play. The static crackled, then the woman's voice came through again. "Which one makes you safe?" Emma pointed to the sun. "Caleb chose the tree. Nora picked the house, and the buzzer sounded." Lila's hands clenched into fists, her nails digging into her palms. "That's her," she whispered. "That's the voice." "And?" Sarah paused the tape. "You're sure?" Lila nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I hear it in my dreams, every night." Sarah's phone buzzed again, insistent. She glanced at the screen of text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Conway. Blue is watching." Her blood ran cold. She stood, crossing to the window, peering into the dark. The street was empty, but a faint shadow moved near the corner, too quick to be sure. "Lila," Sarah said, her voice low. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." Lila's eyes were wide, terrified. "What's happening?" Sarah didn't answer. She stepped outside, her flashlight sweeping the lot. The shadow was gone, but something caught her eye, a rag doll, identical to the one from the nursery, lying on the pavement. Its stitched eyes gleamed in the light, and tucked beneath it was a note, written in blue chalk. "Blue never left." Sarah's heart pounded as she crouched, bagging the note. The air felt wrong, too still, like the world was holding its breath. Then she heard Ida faint, off-key hum from the alley behind the building. "Baby blue in the sky, don't look down or you'll cry." The voice was small, childlike, but it wasn't Lila. Sarah spun, her flashlight cutting through the dark. The beam landed on a cracked mirror propped against the dumpster, reflecting nothing but the empty street. She stepped closer, her pulse roaring in her ears. The singing stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Then, from the mirror, a single word whispered, clear as a bell, Conway. The diner in Springfield, Tennessee, was a relic of better days, its neon sign flickering weakly against the dawn. It was 6 in the morning, July 22nd, 2025, and the air smelled of greasy bacon and rain-soaked asphalt. Detective Sarah Conway sat in a corner booth, her coffee gone cold, her eyes fixed on Lila Harper across the table. Lila's hands trembled around her mug, her gray sweater pulled tight over her knuckles, hiding the faint B tattooed on her wrist. The scar on her temple seemed to pulse in the dim light, a silent reminder of a past neither of them fully understood. Outside, the storm had passed, but the sky hung low, heavy with the promise of more rain. Sarah's notebook lay open, the Polaroid from the Harper house nursery tucked between its pages. The image of the girl baby Blue, Lila standing in front of the empty mirror, had burned itself into Sarah's mind. The note from the alley last night, scrawled in blue chalk, sat in an evidence bag beside her. Blue never left. The words felt alive, like a threat that hadn't yet shown its teeth. Lila's call to the station, claiming she was one of the children from the 1987 Black Hollow Daycare Fire, had dragged Sarah back to Springfield. She needed answers, and Lila was the key. You said you were there, Sarah began, her voice low but steady, cutting through the diner's hum of clinking plates and murmured conversations. The daycare, the nursery, tell me everything you remember. Lila's eyes darted to the window, scanning the empty parking lot. I was 4, she said, her voice fragile, like glass about to crack. It's patchy, like trying to piece together a dream. But I remember the room, blue walls, ducks, and rabbits on the wallpaper. Cribs with names Emma, Caleb, Nora. And me. They didn't call me Lila. They called me Baby Blue. Sarah's pen hovered over her notebook. Why blue? Lila's fingers tightened on her mug. The wall by my crib. It was painted different blue with white clouds. The others had yellow or pink. They said it was my space, like it made me special. But it didn't feel special. It felt marked. She swallowed, her voice dropping to a whisper. They'd make us do things. Pick cards, say words, look into this big mirror. If we got it wrong, they'd put us in the box. Sarah's stomach churned. She'd seen the metal crate in the nursery footage, 3 feet square, a dog kennel turned into a punishment cell. The dog box, she said, her voice tight. What was it like? Lila's eyes glazed over, her breath hitching. Dark, tight. You couldn't move, couldn't scream after a while. They'd leave you in there for hours, sometimes longer. I stopped crying after the first few times. It didn't help. She paused, her fingers tracing the B on her wrist. Ezra, he was different. He'd talk to me through the wall, tell me to hum so I wouldn't feel alone. He said the box couldn't break us. Sarah leaned forward, her heart pounding. Ezra, tell me about him. Lila's gaze drifted to the table, her voice barely audible. He was older, maybe 6 or 7. Quiet, but not like us. He didn't play, didn't smile. They kept him in a separate room, one with a big mirror on the wall. They called it the mirror room. He'd come back from there, different. Like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. Sarah slid the Polaroid across the table, the image of the nursery with the girl in front of the empty mirror. Is this the room? The mirror? Lila's breath caught as she touched the photo, her fingers trembling. That's it, she whispered. That's my shirt, the one with the duck. I remember it. Her eyes flicked up, wide with fear. The mirror, they'd make us stand in front of it, say things like, Blue is listening, or, be good for the veil. Ezra said it wasn't just a mirror. He said he saw kids in it, kids who weren't there. Sarah's skin prickled. What kids? Lila shook her head. He never said their names, just faces, shadows. He said they were watching, waiting. I thought he was crazy, but one night, I looked into the mirror, and I swear I saw something move. Not my reflection, something else. She shivered, pulling her sleeves tighter. The night of the fire, they took me out through a tunnel. I heard Ezra scream, like he was fighting someone. Then nothing. I thought he burned with the others. Sarah's pen scratched across the notebook, her mind racing. The fire had been ruled an accident, electrical failure, no bodies found. Emma, Caleb, Nora presumed dead. But Lila, unlisted, had survived, slipped through the cracks of a system that never looked for her. And Ezra, the boy in the mirror room, was a ghost in the records, a name tied to nothing but whispers. She pulled out the cassette player, setting it on the table. "I need you to listen to this," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Tell me if you recognize the voice." Lila's eyes widened, but she nodded. Sarah pressed play. The static hissed, then the woman's voice from the nursery tape cut through, cold and precise. "Which one makes you safe?" The footage showed Emma, Caleb, and Nora at the table, their small hands clutching cards with Symbolsa sun, a tree, a house. The fourth child, Lila, stood in the shadows, her voice faint but clear. "Blue is watching." Lila's hands flew to her mouth, tears welling. "That's her," she whispered. The woman, not Eleanor, she was different. Cold, like she didn't care. She'd watch us through the mirror, write things down. I'd hear her voice at night, even when she wasn't there. Sarah paused the tape, her jaw tight. "You're sure it's not Eleanor Voss?" Lila nodded, her voice shaking. "Eleanor was soft, sang to us, gave us gummy bears. This woman, she scared me. She'd say things like, 'The veil needs you to be perfect.' I didn't know what it meant, but it felt wrong." Sarah's phone buzzed, another unknown number. She ignored it, focusing on Lila. "What happened the night of the fire? You said they took you out. Who?" Lila's eyes darted to the window again, like she expected someone to be there. "A man. He wore glasses, square ones. He smelled like cigarettes and cologne. He grabbed me, told me to be quiet, said I was special. He carried me through the tunnel, left me on the road. I walked until a trucker found me. He never said his name, but I think it was Crane." Sarah's heart skipped. Dr. Leonard Crane, the disgraced psychologist tied to the Promise Project. She scribbled the name, underlining it twice. "And the others? Emma, Caleb, Nora?" Lila's voice broke. "I don't know. They were in the nursery when the alarms went off. I heard screams, then smoke. I thought they died. But Ezra, he was different. They took him somewhere else before the fire. I heard him shouting, like he was fighting, then a bang, like a door slamming shut." Sarah's mind raced. The nursery wasn't just a hidden room, it was a lab, a place for experiments. The Promise Project, the veil, the mirror, it all pointed to something bigger, something that didn't end with the fire. She slid another photo across the table, this one from the notebook found in the Harper house. It was a grainy shot of a girl, maybe 5, singing to herself in the nursery. The caption read, "Subject B, progressing well, isolation effective." "Is this you?" Sarah asked, her voice soft but urgent. Lila's breath hitched. "That's my song," she whispered. "Baby blue in the sky. Don't look down or you'll cry. I'd sing it when I was in the box, to keep from screaming." She touched the photo, tears spilling over. "That's me." Sarah's phone buzzed again, insistent. She glanced at the screen, a text from the same unknown number as last night. "Blue belongs to the veil. Stop now." Her blood ran cold. She stood, crossing to the diner's window, scanning the lot. Nothing but parked cars and the faint glow of streetlights. "Lila," she said, keeping her voice calm, "have you noticed anything strange since you called me? Anyone watching you?" Lila's eyes widened. "Last night," she said, her voice trembling. "I got home late. My closet door was open. I never leave it open. And there was something on my bed." Sarah's hand rested on her holster. "What was it?" Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. "A doll. Like the one you found." Its eyes were stitched shut, and there was a note tucked into its dress. "Blue chalk, same as yours." It said, "Blue never left." Sarah's stomach twisted. She grabbed her radio, her voice sharp. "Dispatch, this is Conway. I need a unit at the Springfield Diner on Main. Now, possible stalking suspect." She turned to Lila, her tone urgent. "You're coming with me. We're not safe here." Lila nodded, grabbing her bag. They stepped outside, the air thick with the smell of rain. Sarah's cruiser was parked 50 feet away, its windows fogged from the humidity. As they crossed the lot, Sarah's flashlight swept the shadows, catching a glint near the diner's back entrance, a cracked mirror propped against the wall, identical to the one from last night. She froze, her beam locked on it. The reflection showed the empty lot, but for a split second, she swore she saw a child's face, pale and unblinking, staring back. "Lila, get in the car," Sarah said, her voice low, controlled. She approached the mirror, her heart pounding. The surface was cold, almost wet, like it had been pulled from a freezer. She reached out, her fingers brushing the glass. It rippled, like water, and a faint hum echoed from within a child's voice, singing. "Baby blue in the sky." Sarah yanked her hand back, her breath shallow. She turned to Lila, who was frozen by the cruiser, her eyes wide with terror. "Did you hear that?" Lila whispered. Sarah nodded, her voice grim. "Yeah. And it's not in our heads." They climbed into the cruiser, Sarah locking the doors. She radioed dispatch again, her tone urgent. "Conway here. I need a forensics team at the Springfield Diner. We've got another mirror, possible evidence, and run a trace on any recent activity tied to Dr. Leonard Crane, 1980s, Knoxville." The radio crackled. "Copy, detective. Forensics is 10 minutes out." Sarah started the engine, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. For a moment, she thought she saw a shadow in the back seat, a small figure, hunched, with stitched shut eyes. She blinked, and it was gone. Lila's voice broke the silence, barely a whisper. "They're still watching me, aren't they?" Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. "Not just you," she said, her voice hard. "They're watching both of us." Back at the Black Hollow station, Sarah set Lila up in a break room with a cup of tea and a uniformed officer at the door. The evidence table was now crowded with bags from the Harper house, scripts, toys, the notebook, the doll, and the new mirror from the diner. Sarah's phone buzzed again, another text. "You can't hide, Blue. The veil sees all." She forwarded it to the tech team, her jaw clenched. Someone was playing games, and she wasn't in the mood. Clara Vance walked in, holding a folder from the Tennessee State Archives. "Got something," she said, sliding it across the desk. "Found a record on Crane. He was tied to a psych hospital outside Black Hollow, shut down in 1989. Place was called Willow Ridge. Rumors were they ran experiments there, mind control stuff, off the books. Crane's name shows up in a funding memo for something called the Promise Project." Sarah flipped through the folder, her eyes scanning the faded pages. A grainy photo showed a man in his 40s, square glasses, thin lips, holding a clipboard in front of a mirrored wall. The caption read, "Dr. Leonard Crane, Behavioral Sciences, Willow Ridge, 1985. Another page, a grant application, mentioned conditioning through reflective stimuli and isolated environments for compliance training. Sarah's stomach turned. "This is it," she said. "The nursery was part of it." Clara nodded, her face grim. "There's more. Found a shipping manifest from 1987. Tapes like the one you've got were sent from Willow Ridge to a place in Coldwater, Indiana. Sanctum Hall. Pastor Reed mentioned it, right?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Yeah. He said they were part of a network." She grabbed her jacket, her voice sharp. "I'm heading to Coldwater. Get Lila a safe house, and keep that mirror under lock and key. Something's not right with it." Clara hesitated. "Sarah, you sure you want to do this alone? Whoever's sending these notes, they know you're digging." Sarah's hand rested on her holster, her voice cold. "Good, let them know I'm coming." She stepped outside, the night air thick, with the scent of rain. Her cruiser's headlights cut through the fog as she pulled onto the highway, the road to Coldwater stretching into the dark. Her phone buzzed one last time. A final text. Blue is closer than you think. Sarah's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, expecting another shadow. The reflection was empty, but the glass seemed to hum, a faint vibration she could feel in her bones. Then, from the back seat, a soft, childlike voice whispered, "Don't look into the mirror, Conway. It's not safe." The road to Coldwater, Indiana, was a ribbon of cracked asphalt cutting through fields of dead corn and rusted factories. It was just past midnight, July 23rd, 2025, and the air was thick with the smell of oil and wet earth. Detective Sarah Conway gripped the steering wheel of her cruiser, her eyes scanning the dark for any sign of trouble. The 4-hour drive from Black Hollow, Tennessee, had been a blur of headlights and static on the radio, her mind racing with the pieces of the puzzle, the hidden nursery, the tapes, Lila Harper's haunted memories, and the name that kept surfacing, Dr. Leonard Crane and his Promise Project. The text messages "Blue is closer than you think" sat heavy in her gut, like a warning carved in stone. Sanctum Hall, the old church pastor Daniel Reed had mentioned, was her next stop. Whatever was happening, it started there. Coldwater was a ghost town, its streets lined with boarded-up storefronts and streetlights that flickered like dying stars. The church loomed at the edge of town, a white clapboard husk with blackened windows and a cross carved into the sagging porch. Sarah parked a block away, her cruiser half hidden behind a rusted dumpster. The air felt wrong, too still, like the town was holding its breath. She tucked her flashlight into her belt, her service weapon holstered under her jacket, and checked her phone's signal. Of course. She stepped out, her boots crunching on gravel, and approached the church, her senses sharp. The front door was locked, a heavy padlock glinting in the moonlight. Sarah circled the building, her flashlight sweeping the walls. A security camera blinked above the rear entrance, its red light steady, watching. She froze, her pulse quickening. Someone was maintaining this place. She found a mail slot on the back wall, barely visible, labeled in faded letters, "Promise materials only." Her stomach twisted. This wasn't just a church, it was a hub. She radioed her backup, a tactical team from the Indiana State Police, due to arrive in 20 minutes. "Conway here," she whispered. "I'm at Sanctum Hall, Coldwater. Rear entrance has a camera. Possible active sight. Hold position until I give the signal." The radio crackled faintly, the only sound in the oppressive silence. Sarah tested the rear door, a metal security slab. It was locked but not bolted, the handle giving slightly under her grip. She pulled a lockpick from her pocket, her hand steady despite the churn in her gut. The lock clicked open, and the door groaned inward, releasing a puff of stale air that smelled of dust and something sharper, old paper, maybe, or chemicals. She stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the dark. The interior was a gutted sanctuary, the pews replaced with rows of metal shelves stretching to the ceiling. Hundreds of VHS tapes, camcorder cassettes, and hard drives lined the racks, each labeled in precise handwriting. Princess Room Volume 1, Blue 28, Subject Riley Integration Prep. Sarah's breath caught. This wasn't a storage room, it was an archive, a library of stolen childhoods. She moved deeper, her boots silent on the hardwood floor. The air grew colder, heavier, like it was pressing against her skin. "Police," she called, her voice echoing. "This is Detective Sarah Conway, Black Hollow, PD. Show yourself." No answer, just the faint hum of a generator somewhere deep in the building. She scanned the shelves, her flashlight catching a label that made her pause. An 01, Ezra, Observation Prep. Her heart pounded. Ezra, the boy Lila had mentioned, the one kept in the mirror room. She grabbed the tape, slipping it into her jacket. A soft thud came from the back of the building, like a door closing. Sarah froze, her hand on her holster. "This is your last chance," she said, her voice low, dangerous. "Come out now." Silence. She moved toward the sound, her flashlight sweeping a narrow hallway labeled "Staff Access Only." At the end was a trapdoor in the floor, its edges flush with the wood, a rusted handle barely visible. She crouched, her fingers brushing the cold metal. It was unlocked. Sarah radioed again. "Conway. Found a trapdoor. I'm going in. Send the team now." She didn't wait for a response. She pulled the door open, revealing a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The air that wafted up was frigid, laced with that same chemical tang. She descended, her boots echoing on concrete steps, her flashlight cutting through the gloom. The stairwell opened into a basement, its walls lined with concrete, no windows, just 5 numbered doors, each with a small round window at eye level. She approached the first door, peering through the glass. Empty. The second, the same. At the third, she stopped cold. Inside was a small cot, a tray bolted to the floor, and a name scratched into the concrete wall. N01. Sarah's breath hitched. This was Ezra's room. The walls were scarred with deep, angled scratches, like fingernails had clawed through the stone. A mirror frame hung on the far wall, its glass missing, only rusted brackets remaining. "Jesus," Sarah whispered, pushing the door open. The room was bare, long abandoned, but the air felt heavy, like it was watching her. She scanned the floor, her beam catching a faint outlining vent panel, slightly askew. She knelt, prying it open with her knife. Inside was a small cassette, taped to the vent with electrical tape. A note was attached, written in red pencil. "He still remembers. You weren't the only one they named." Sarah's hands trembled as she bagged the cassette. She stood, her flashlight sweeping the room one last time. The scratches on the wall seemed to shift in the light, forming words. "Be good." Blue is watching. Her stomach lurched. She backed out, sealing the door behind her, and radioed the team. "Conway. Basement's clear, but I've got new evidence. Move in." The tactical team arrived minutes later, their boots thundering through the sanctuary. Sarah stood by the shelves, watching as they bagged tapes and drives, her mind racing. The lead officer, a burly man named Torres, approached her, his face grim. "Detective, you need to see this," he said, gesturing to a back room. "We found something behind the altar." Sarah followed, her pulse roaring. The altar had been replaced with a desk, and behind it was a locked filing cabinet. Torres pried it open, revealing a black leather ledger, its pages filled with names, dates, and statuses. Sarah flipped through it, her eyes scanning the entries. Lacey P. Willow Creek, erased. Milo R. Willow Creek, erased. Jamie H. Willow Creek, erased. BB. Blue, delivered. Her breath caught. There were over 150 names, spanning 1984 to 2019, across Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee. Each entry had a status: erased, integrated, delivered, unresponsive, reclaimed. "This is a network," Sarah whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "They didn't stop in 87. Seus." Torres nodded, holding up a VHS tape labeled Blue 28. "This was in the cabinet. You want to play it?" Sarah hesitated, her gut screaming at her to leave it alone. But she nodded, and Torres set up a portable player. The screen flickered, showing a pale girl with tangled hair, Lila, maybe 5, sitting alone in a pink-walled room, coloring quietly. A song played softly. "Baby blue in the sky, don't look down, or you'll cry." A man's voice, nasal and cold, spoke off camera. "What's your name?" The girl didn't answer. "Say it," the voice snapped. "I'm Baby Blue," she whispered, her voice breaking. "And who do you belong to?" the man asked. She looked at the camera, her eyes empty. "You." Sarah slammed the pause button, her hands shaking. "That's Lila," she said, her voice low, furious. They were training her, conditioning her. Torres's jaw tightened. "There's more. Look at this." He handed her a handwritten list from the cabinet, a mailing list for something called the Promise Project newsletter. Names and addresses stretched across 5 states, with 2 standing out: S. March, Willow Creek, and K. Duval, no address. But the last name made Sarah's blood run cold. E. Marsh, Black Hollow, Tennessee. "Evelyn Marsh," Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. "She's still in Black Hollow." Torres frowned. "Who's that?" Sarah flipped through the ledger, finding a note in the margin. E. Marsh, secondary observer, Promise Project, 1987. She was part of it, Sarah said, her mind racing. Crane's partner. She's still alive, still in town. Torres grabbed his radio. I'll get a unit to check her address. Sarah shook her head. Number, I'm going myself. If she's there, I want answers. She turned to the shelves, her flashlight sweeping the tapes. One caught her eye. N01, Ezra, transferred to Ridgeview, Tennessee. Her heart skipped. Ezra wasn't just a ghost in Lila's memory, she was real, and he'd been moved. As the team continued bagging evidence, Sarah's phone buzzed with a new text. The veil sees you, Conway. Her blood ran cold. She stepped outside, the Indiana air sharp against her skin. The street was empty, but a faint hum echoed from the church, like a child's voice carried on the wind. She turned back, her flashlight catching a glint near the rear entrance, a rag doll, its eyes stitched shut, lying on the ground. Tucked beneath it was a note in blue chalk. Ezra is watching. Sarah bagged the note, her hands steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. She radioed Torres. Conway. Found another doll outside. I'm heading to Black Hollow to find Evelyn Marsh. Keep the site locked down. Copy, Torres replied. Watch your back, detective. And Sarah climbed into her cruiser, the ledger and Ezra's tape in her bag. The drive back was a blur, her mind replaying the footage of Lila, the scratches on the wall, the empty mirror. Evelyn Marsh was the key, and Sarah was going to break her open. Black Hollow was asleep when Sarah pulled into town at 4 in the morning, the streets slick with rain. Evelyn Marsh's address was a small house on the edge of the forest, its windows dark, its yard overgrown with weeds. Sarah parked a block away, her flashlight off, moving silently through the shadows. The air smelled of pine and decay, the kind of rot that lingered in places where secrets were buried. She knocked on the door, her hand on her holster. Evelyn Marsh, this is Detective Sarah Conway, Black Hollow PD. Open the door. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Silence. She circled the house, her boots sinking into the mud. A basement window was cracked open, just enough to slip through. Sarah pried it wider, sliding inside. The basement was cold, cluttered with boxes and old medical equipment, syringes, charts, a rusted gurney. Sarah's flashlight swept the room, landing on a corkboard pinned with photos. Children, dozens of them, their faces blank, their eyes fixed on mirrors. One photo showed Lila, her small hands clutching a card with a sun symbol. Another showed a boy, Ezra, maybe 7, standing in front of a mirrored wall, his expression hollow. A note was pinned beside it, N01, ideal subject, ready for transfer. Sarah's heart pounded. She moved to a desk, finding a journal labeled Promise Project Observations. The pages detailed experiment sound conditioning, visual cues, isolation protocols. One entry, dated April 10, 1988, read, Subject B responds to mirror stimuli. Evelyn to oversee final phase. The veil requires perfection. Evelyn, Sarah whispered, her voice shaking with rage. She turned, her flashlight catching a shadow in the corner, a woman, tall and thin, her hair gray, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Evelyn Marsh. You shouldn't be here, Evelyn said, her voice calm, almost serene. The veil doesn't like intruders. Sarah drew her weapon, her voice low, dangerous. Evelyn Marsh, you're under arrest for conspiracy and child endangerment. Hands where I can see them. Evelyn smiled, a cold, knowing smile. You think you can stop it? The Promise Project was never about us. It was about them, the children. They were meant to be perfect, to serve the veil. Sarah's grip tightened on her gun. What's the veil? Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes gleaming. Look in the mirror, Conway. You'll see. Sarah's flashlight swept the room, landing on a large mirror propped against the wall. Its surface was dark, almost liquid, and for a moment, she swore she saw movement, a child's face, pale and unblinking, staring back. Her radio crackled, breaking the spell. Conway, this is Torres. We've got a problem at Sanctum Hall. Someone triggered a smoke bomb. Half the archive's gone. Now, Sarah's blood ran cold. She turned to Evelyn, but the woman was gone, the basement door swinging open. Sarah ran after her, her boots pounding the stairs, but the house was empty. On the kitchen table, a new note waited, written in blue chalk. Blue belongs to the veil. And beside it, a rag doll, its stitched eyes gleaming in the dark. Sarah's phone buzzed, a new text. You're too late, Conway. Ezra is watching. She spun, her flashlight sweeping the room, landing on the mirror. The reflection showed the kitchen, the table, the doll, but not her. And from the glass, a faint, childlike voice sang, "Baby blue in the sky, don't look down or you'll cry." The Cumberland Plateau stretched out like a graveyard of twisted pines and fog, the air heavy with the scent of damp moss and decay. It was dawn, July 25th, 2025, and Ridgeview School for Children loomed at the edge of the wilderness, its red brick walls strangled by ivy, its windows shattered like broken teeth. Detective Sarah Conway parked her cruiser behind a cluster of dead trees, her breath shallow, as she scanned the abandoned boarding school. The ledger from Sanctum Hall had pointed her here, to a place where Ezra, the boy Lila called the first subject, had been taken after the 1987 Black Hollow Daycare Fire. The note in blue chalk Ezra is watching burned in her mind, a taunt she couldn't shake. Her radio crackled, the tactical team from Knoxville confirming they were 10 minutes out. Sarah wasn't waiting. She stepped out, her boots sinking into the muddy earth, her flashlight clipped to her belt beside her holster. The school's sign hung crooked, its faded letters barely legible. Ridgeview School for Children. Established 1959. A place to learn, a place to grow. The irony twisted her gut. This wasn't a school, it was a prison. A lab for the Promise Project and the shadowy group behind it. The Order of the Silent Veil. Sarah's hand tightened on her gun as she approached the east wing, the air thick with the hum of cicadas, and something else, a faint vibration she could feel in her bones. The front door was boarded shut, but a side entrance gaped open, its lock long rusted away. Sarah slipped inside, her flashlight cutting through the dark. The hallway was a ruin of rotted books and overturned desks, the air smelling of mildew and something sharper, like old chemicals. She moved past a cafeteria, its tables coated in dust, and found a narrow corridor marked staff access only. The ledger had mentioned a basement annex, a place for observation. Her pulse quickened as she spotted a steel door at the end, its handle rusted but intact. A dead keypad hung beside it, wires dangling like exposed vines. Sarah pried the panel open, crossing the wires with steady hands. The lock clicked, and the door groaned inward, releasing a blast of cold, stale air. She descended the stairwell, counting 30 steps, then 40, then 50, the concrete walls closing in tighter with each step. At the bottom, a corridor stretched out, lined with 5 numbered doors, each with a small round window at eye level. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of something preserved, like formaldehyde. Sarah's flashlight swept the first door empty. The second, the same. At the third, she froze. The window revealed a small cot, a tray bolted to the floor, and a name carved into the concrete, N01. Ezra's room. The walls were scarred with deep scratches, like fingernails had clawed through stone. A mirror frame hung on the far wall, its glass gone, only rusted brackets remaining. Sarah pushed the door open, her heart pounding. The room was bare, long abandoned, but the air felt alive, watching. She knelt by the cot, her flashlight catching a faint outlining event panel, slightly askew. She pried it open, revealing a small cassette taped to the inside, a note attached in red pencil. He still remembers. You weren't the only one they named. Sarah bagged the cassette, her hands trembling. She stood, sweeping the room one last time. The scratches on the wall formed words, jagged and desperate. Be good. Blue is watching. Her stomach lurched. She stepped back, her radio crackling. Conway, this is Torres. Team's 5 minutes out. You in the basement? Affirmative, Sarah whispered. Found Ezra's room. Evidence secured. Hurry up. She moved to the 4th door, peering through the window. Another empty room, but a chalkboard lay cracked on the floor, its faint letters barely legible. BEGO, DBLU. Sarah's breath caught. She pushed the door open, her flashlight landing on a single object in the corner, a rag doll, its eyes stitched shut, identical to the ones found at the Harper house and Lila's apartment. A note was pinned to its dress. Blue sees all. Sarah's radio crackled again, but before she could respond, a shadow moved behind her. She spun, her gun drawn, her flashlight sweeping the corridor. A woman stood at the far end, tall and thin, her gray hair catching the light. Evelyn Marsh, the secondary observer from the Promise Project, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. "You're persistent, Conway," Evelyn said, her voice calm, almost amused. Most people would have stopped by now. Sarah kept her gun steady, her voice low, dangerous. "Evelyn Marsh, you're under arrest. Step forward, hands where I can see them." Evelyn didn't move. "You don't understand what you're chasing," she said, her smile cold. "The veil isn't just a project, it's a purpose. The children were chosen, shaped to be perfect. Ezra was the first, the key." Sarah's jaw clenched. "What did you do to him?" Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes gleaming. "We gave him a gift. The mirror wasn't just a tool, it was a door. Ezra walked through it. He became something more." Sarah's skin prickled. "You're insane. Where is he?" Evelyn's smile widened. "Look behind you." Sarah turned, her flashlight landing on the fifth door. Its window was dark, but the glass rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. She approached, her heart roaring in her ears. The reflection showed the corridor, the doors, but not her. Instead, 4 children stood there, Emma, Caleb, Nora, and a boy, older, his eyes hollow. Ezra. Sarah's breath hitched. She reached for the glass, her fingers brushing its surface. It was cold, liquid, and her hands sank in, like dipping into a frozen lake. A small, cold hand grabbed her wrist from the other side, pulling hard. Sarah yanked back, stumbling, her gun clattering to the floor. "What the hell?" she shouted, her voice echoing. The glass was still again, the children gone. Evelyn's laughter filled the corridor, sharp and mocking. "You felt it, didn't you?" Evelyn said, stepping closer. "The veil is real, Conway. It's always been real." Sarah grabbed her gun, her hand shaking. "Stay back," she snapped. "What's in the mirror?" Evelyn's eyes gleamed. The children, their minds, their souls. The mirrors hold them, keep them safe for the veil. Ezra was the first to cross over. He's still there, watching. Sarah's radio crackled. "Conway, team's at the entrance. Where are you?" "Basement," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Suspect in custody. Move in now." Evelyn tilted her head, unfazed. "You think you can stop us? The veil is everywhere, and Blue, she's ours." Sarah's blood ran cold. "Lila," she whispered. She grabbed Evelyn, cuffing her wrists with a swift motion. "Where is she?" Evelyn's smile didn't falter. "Check her apartment. You're already too late." Sarah dragged Evelyn up the stairwell, the tactical team meeting her at the entrance. "Secure the suspect," she ordered, handing Evelyn to Torres. "I'm heading back to Springfield. Lila's in danger." Torres nodded, his face grim. "We found more tapes in the basement. One's labeled Blue, Final Session. You want it?" Sarah took the tape, her hands steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "Bag everything," she said. "And get that mirror out of there. It's evidence." The drive back to Springfield was a blur, the highway stretching into the dark, like a tunnel to nowhere. Sarah's phone was silent, no new texts, but the absence felt worse than the threats. She reached Lila's apartment at 3 in the morning, the building quiet except for the hum of a distant air conditioner. The door was ajar, a faint light spilling into the hall. Sarah drew her gun, her flashlight sweeping the room. "Lila," she called, her voice sharp. "It's Conway, you hear?" No answer. The apartment was a wreck, book scattered, furniture overturned, a lamp shattered on the floor. Sarah's heart pounded as she moved to the bedroom. Lila was gone. On the bed, a rag doll sat propped against the pillow, its stitched eyes gleaming. A note in blue chalk was tucked into its dress. "Blue belongs to the veil." Sarah's radio crackled. "Conway, This is Clara. We got a hit on Lila's phone. Last ping was at Willow Ridge, the old psych hospital outside Black Hollow. You want backup? I'm already moving, Sarah said, her voice hard. Meet me there. Willow Ridge loomed on the outskirts of Black Hollow, its crumbling walls hidden by overgrown pines. The hospital had been abandoned since 1989, its history tied to Crane's experiments. Sarah parked 100 yards out, her flashlight off, moving through the dark like a shadow. The air was thick with the smell of rot and chemicals, the kind that lingered in places where hope had died. She found a broken window, slipping inside. The hospital was a maze of peeling paint and rusted gurneys, the air heavy with dust. Sarah followed a faint hum, like a child's voice, down a hallway marked restricted ward. At the end was a steel door, a keypad glowing faintly. She crossed the wires, the lock clicking open. Inside was a room lined with mirrors, their surfaces dark, almost liquid. In the center, Lila sat tied to a chair, her eyes wide with terror. A woman stood beside her, her back to Sarah Evelyn Marsh, free, her cuffs gone. Stop, Sarah said, her gun raised. Step away from her, Evelyn. Evelyn turned, her smile cold. You're late, Conway. The veil always gets what it wants. Sarah's eyes flicked to Lila. You okay? Lila nodded, her voice shaking. She said I belong to them. That Ezra, he's still here. Sarah's flashlight swept the mirrors. They rippled, showing not the room but a nursery blue walls, cribs, the children from the tapes, Emma, Caleb, Nora, and Ezra, their eyes hollow, staring back. Sarah's breath caught. What is this? She demanded. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice low, reverent. The veil is eternal. The mirrors hold their essence, their obedience. Ezra was the first to cross, but Blue, she's the key to the next phase. Sarah's gun didn't waver. Untee her. Now. Evelyn laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You can't stop it. The veil is in every mirror, every shadow. Look behind you. Sarah turned, her flashlight landing on a mirror. Her reflection was gone, replaced by Ezra, his face pale, his eyes black voids. He reached out, his hand breaking through the glass, cold fingers wrapping around her wrist. Sarah screamed, pulling back, but the grip was iron. Lila's voice cut through the dark, desperate. Sarah, don't let him take you. The room shook, the mirrors humming, the air alive with whispers. Blue is watching, Ezra's voice said, echoing from every surface. Sarah fired her gun, the bullet shattering the mirror, but the shards didn't fall, they hung in the air, spinning, reflecting 100 faces, 100 children, all chanting, Blue is watching. The Willow Ridge Psychiatric Hospital was a crumbling monument to forgotten pain, its walls choked with vines and its windows blind with grime. It was just past midnight, July 26, 2025, and the air outside Black Hollow, Tennessee, reeked of wet earth and decay. Detective Sarah Conway crouched in the shadows of the hospital's east wing, her heart hammering against her ribs. The mirror room at Ridgeview had shaken her, the cold grip of Ezra's hand still burning in her memory. Lila Harper was missing, taken from her apartment, and the note Blue belongs to the veil pointed to this place. Sarah's flashlight was off, her service weapon drawn. As she moved through the dark, the hum of cicadas masking her steps. The Promise Project, the Order of the Silent Veil, and the mirrors, they were all connected, and Willow Ridge was the heart of it. Inside, the hospital was a labyrinth of peeling paint and rusted gurneys, the air thick with the stench of mildew and chemicals. Sarah followed a faint hum, the same childlike singing she'd heard before, Baby Blue in the sky. Don't look down, or you'll cry. It led her to a steel door marked restricted ward, its lock broken, the hinges groaning as she pushed it open. The corridor beyond was lined with mirrors, their surfaces dark and rippling, like pools of ink. At the end, a single door stood ajar, light spilling through the crack. Sarah's gut screamed at her to turn back, but Lila was in there. She had to be. She stepped forward, her boots silent on the cracked linoleum. The mirrors seemed to watch her, their reflections empty, showing only shadows and fleeting glimpses of faces, children, their eyes hollow, their mouths moving in silent chants. Sarah's breath caught as she reached the door, peering inside. Lila sat tied to a chair, in the center of a circular room, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. Mirrors lined the walls, floor to ceiling, their surfaces pulsing with a faint glow. A man stood beside Lila, tall and gaunt, his face hidden by a hood, his voice low and measured. "Blue, you were always ours," he said, his words dripping with reverence. "The veil never forgets." Sarah raised her gun, her voice cutting through the hum. "Step away from her. Hands up, now." The man turned, his hood falling back to reveal a face lined with age, his eyes cold behind square glasses. Not Leonard Crane had been dead for years, but someone new, someone worse. "Detective Conway," he said, his voice smooth, like a preacher delivering a sermon. "You're late. The veil has already claimed her." Lila's voice cracked, desperate. "Sarah, don't let him do this. He says Ezra's here, in the mirrors." Sarah's eyes flicked to the walls, the mirrors reflecting not the room but a nursery blue walls. Cribs, the children from the tapes, Emma, Caleb, Nora, and Ezra, their faces blank, their hands pressed against the glass. "Who are you?" Sarah demanded, her gun steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. The man smiled, his teeth glinting in the dim light. "They call me the Keeper. I guard the veil's work, its children. Ezra was the first, but Blue, she's the key to the ascension." Sarah's jaw clenched. "Let her go, or I put a bullet in you." The Keeper laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You can't stop the veil, Conway. It's in every mirror, every shadow. Look around you." "Yaman." Sarah's flashlight swept the room, the mirrors humming, their surfaces rippling like water. She saw her own face for a moment, then others' children, dozens of them, their eyes black voids. Lila's voice broke through, trembling. "Sarah, Ezra taught me how to hide in the mirrors. He said it was the only way to escape. He's still here, fighting them." Sarah stepped closer, her gun trained on the Keeper. "Untie her, now." The Keeper raised his hands, mock surrender. "You want answers? Play the tape." He gestured to a cassette player on a table, a single tape labeled Blue, Final Session. Sarah hesitated, her instincts screaming, but she needed to know. Keeping her gun on the Keeper, she pressed play. The screen flickered, showing Lila, maybe 5, sitting in the nursery, her hands clutching a card with a sun symbol. Ezra stood in the corner, his eyes fixed on a mirror. A woman's voice, Evelyn Marsh's, came through, cold and precise. "Blue, what do you see in the mirror?" Lila's voice was small, trembling. "Ezra, he's inside." "Good," Evelyn said. "Now tell him to stay." Ezra's voice, faint but defiant, cut through. "I won't stay. I'll take them with me." The screen distorted, static swallowing the image, but Ezra's voice lingered, echoing, "I'll take them all." Sarah's heart pounded. She turned to the Keeper, her voice low, furious. "What did you do to him?" The Keeper's smile widened. "Ezra was our first success. He crossed the veil, became part of it. The mirrors hold their essence, their obedience. Blue was meant to follow, but she escaped. Now she's back." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "He's lying, Sarah. Ezra saved me. He told me to run, to hide in the mirror's reflection. He said he'd find a way out." Sarah's radio crackled. "Conway, this is Torres. Teams at Willow Ridge. Where are you?" "Restricted ward," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Suspect in custody." "Lila's here. Move in." "And..." The Keeper's eyes gleamed. "You think your team can stop us?" "The veil is eternal. It's in every city, every shadow. Look in the mirror, Conway. See the truth." Sarah's flashlight landed on the nearest mirror. Her reflection was gone, replaced by a younger version of herself, maybe 8, standing beside a girl she hadn't thought of in years. Her cousin Mia, lost in 1987, the same year as the fire. Sarah's breath caught, her gun wavering. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." The Keeper's voice was soft, taunting. "You were one of them, Conway. A subject, Unlisted, forgotten. The veil never lets go. Sarah's mind reeled. Memories flickered, flashes of a blue-walled room, a mirror, a voice telling her to be good. She shook her head, forcing the images away. "You're lying," she snapped, stepping closer to Lila, her knife cutting through the ropes. "Lila, get behind me." Lila stumbled free, her hands shaking. "Sarah, he's right. I remember you. You were there, in the nursery, before the fire. You were different." Sarah's stomach twisted. She grabbed Lila's arm, pulling her toward the door. "We're leaving, now." The keeper didn't move, his smile unshaken. "You can't run from the veil. It's in you, Conway. Always has been." The mirrors hummed louder, the air vibrating with whispers, children's voices, chanting, "Blue is watching." Sarah's flashlight flickered, the beam stuttering. She pushed Lila toward the corridor, her gun still on the keeper. "Move," she said, her voice hard. They reached the hallway, the mirrors reflecting 100 faces, 100 children, their hands pressing against the glass. Sarah's radio crackled again. "Conway, we're inside. Where's the ward?" "End of the east wing," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Hurry." Lila's voice was a whisper. "Sarah, they're in the mirrors, all of them." Sarah didn't look back. They ran, the corridor stretching endlessly, the mirrors pulsing with light. A door slammed behind them, the keeper's laughter echoing. Sarah kicked open an exit, dragging Lila into the night. The tactical team was there, rifles raised, flashlights cutting through the fog. Torres grabbed Sarah's arm. "You okay?" "She's fine," Sarah said, nodding to Lila. "Suspect's inside. Tall, hooded, calls himself the keeper. Get him." Torres signaled the team, who stormed the building. Sarah led Lila to her cruiser, her hands still shaking. "You're safe now," she said, but the words felt hollow. The mirrors, the voices, her own face in that reflection, it was too much. Lila's eyes were wide, haunted. "Ezra's still in there, Sarah. He saved me, but he's trapped. He said he'd take them all, the other kids. He's fighting them." Sarah's throat tightened. "We'll find him," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. She opened the cruiser door, helping Lila inside. Her phone buzzed a new text, no number. "The veil is everywhere." Attached was a photo. Sarah, 8 years old, standing in front of a mirror, her cousin Mia beside her, their faces blank. Sarah's blood ran cold. She slammed the door, her mind racing. "Stay here," she told Lila, grabbing her radio. "Torres, you got him?" "Negative," Torres replied. "Building's empty. No sign of the suspect. Found a tape, though. Labeled Conway, Session 1. Sarah's heart stopped. "Bag it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm coming back." Back at the Black Hollow station, Sarah sat in the evidence room, the new tape in front of her. Lila was in a safe house, guarded by 2 officers, but Sarah couldn't shake the image of her own face in the mirror. The ledger from Sanctum Hall, the tapes, the notes, they all pointed to a network, a machine that hadn't stopped in 1987, and now, she was part of it. The tape labeled Conway, Session 1 sat in the player, its presence like a weight on her chest. She pressed play, the screen flickering to life. A younger Sarah, maybe 8, sat in a blue-walled room, a mirror behind her. A woman's voice, Evelyn Marcia, spoke softly. "Sarah, what do you see in the mirror?" Young Sarah's voice was small, hesitant. "A girl. She's sad." "Good," Evelyn said. "Now tell her to be good." Sarah's hands trembled as she paused the tape. Her memories were fractured, buried, but they were there, a room, a mirror, a voice. She'd been part of the Promise Project, a subject like Lila, like Ezra. The keeper's words echoed, "The veil never lets go." Torres knocked, stepping inside. "We found something in the hospital," he said, holding a folder. A list, 12 facilities across the country: Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, more, all tied to the Promise Project. Last entry says Phase 2 begins 2026. Sarah's stomach churned. "They're still active," she said, her voice low. "This isn't over." Torres nodded, his face grim. "There's one more thing." Found this in the mirror room. He handed her a small cassette, unlabeled, with a note, Ezra's promise. Sarah slid it into the player, her hands shaking. The screen flickered, showing Ezra, maybe 7, standing in front of a mirror. His voice was soft, defiant. "I'm not staying," he said. "I'll take them all. Emma, Caleb, Nora, Blue, everyone. The veil can't keep us." He reached for the mirror, his hand sinking into the glass, and the screen cut to black. Sarah's breath caught. She turned to Torres. "Get this to forensics. Cross-reference. Every name, every location. We're shutting this down." The sun was rising over Black Hollow, painting the sky blood red. Sarah stood outside the station, the ledger and tapes locked in the evidence room. Lila was safe, but the weight of the truth pressed against her spine. She'd been one of them, a child in the nursery, conditioned, watched, forgotten. The veil was still out there, its network stretching across the country, its mirrors holding secrets no one should know. She pulled out her phone, the last text still open, "The veil is everywhere." She typed a reply, her fingers steady. Not for long. She hit send, knowing it wouldn't reach anyone, but it felt like defiance. She looked at her reflection in the cruiser's window, half expecting to see Ezra or Mia staring back. The glass was empty, but the air hummed, a faint whisper echoing, "Blue is watching." Expert perspective and warning. Dr. Rachel Bennett, a criminal psychologist specializing in cults and child exploitation, offers this analysis. Groups like the Order of the Silent Veil exploit vulnerability, using psychological manipulation to control and dehumanize. The Promise Project's use of mirrors and conditioning reflects a chilling blend of pseudoscience and fanaticism, designed to break children's spirits under the guise of salvation. Early detection of secretive organizations, especially those targeting children, is critical to dismantling their networks. Lessons learned. This case underscores the need for rigorous oversight of childcare facilities, particularly in rural areas where regulation is often lax. Parents must demand transparency from any program claiming to educate or treat children. Community vigilance can prevent atrocities like those of the Promise Project. Warning. Networks exploiting children often hide behind legitimate FACADE schools, churches, clinics. If you suspect unusual activity, report it immediately to local authorities or child protective services. The children like Emma, Caleb, Nora, Ezra, and Lila deserve to be remembered, not erased.